Hey, Anthony.
Hey James, Gunnar, how are we?
Good. How are you today?
Good.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Your home office?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this in the other office
Yeah.
being open plan.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get into it, Anthony, I thought maybe we just start with a bit of an overview as to what we thought this series that we intend to do over time is all about, and then we can jump into it.
Yep.
So within the pod, Gunnar and I have got these kind of mini series or whatever you want to call them, these kind of recurring formats that we want to do. One of them is the basics, so kind of introductory topics on various things. And the other one, which is this will be the first of it, is a series that we want to title The Client. And the point of this series is really meant to be a bit of a look behind the scenes of, organizations and businesses that we work with. And when we think about our audience is primarily other consultants in the environmental field and regulators. So people within the EPA and councils and some interstate regulators and that sort of thing. We know that that's who the majority of our audience is. So we thought that it would be really valuable to have a bit of an open and candid discussion with people who are actually operating businesses that we interact with.
Oh, it's good. When you're the size of Joe Rogan, I'll say, hey, I was the first one.
That's it. You're the one that started it all off.
Yeah.
Exactly. We continuously, we are the Joe Rogan podcast of the environmental industry in New South Wales.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully what you're doing will drive some change and also help people with different issues and matters.
Yeah. So before we get into it, we like to do like a bit of an icebreaker. So I don't know if you had a chance to think about this, but we like to start sometimes asking in a movie of your life, who do you think would play you? Like what actor would you like to play you?
Uh, I'd have to say Harvey Keitel. You probably don't know who he is, but Harvey Keitel, he's done some crazy movies over time.
Yeah, I just found him. I definitely recognize he's one of those guys where like you've seen him in heaps of movies, but you haven't placed his name.
Well, I'm showing you my age because
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs,
yeah, that's it. Reservoir Dogs and stuff like that.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, all that crazy stuff. So it's a difficult question, really. I've
Yeah,
never thought about it before.
it's a tricky one, but no, that's a good answer, mate. I think yes, particularly when he's a bit younger, I can see a bit of a resemblance there.
Yeah.
So the reason that I asked you on here is because we have done a little bit of work together recently, and I just thought that your organization was a really interesting one. So your company, for anyone who doesn't know, is called Tank Management Australia, and I'll let you give us all the background on it. But yeah, I just thought that your business is quite a niche business that you run, and I thought that's why it'd be really interesting to get into it. Do you want to just start by giving us a bit of a rundown, Anthony, on both your background and how you found yourself to be running this business, and just a bit about Tank Management Australia itself?
Sure. I'm a mechanical plumber by trade, and I wasn't very good at that. So, when I became qualified, building industry collapsed. So I went and used those skills in companies that did drain cleaning. So we were putting jets up pipes, and I became a camera operator. So I was looking at the inside of all of Sydney Water's pipes everywhere and
Yeah.
documenting damage and where repairs needed to be happen, all that sort of thing. Did that for a few years and got an extensive knowledge of the whole network of, drainage and where it all goes. And did that for a couple of years and then spent a couple of years doing some other things. And my dad had a small transport company and he was transporting industrial 200 litre
Yeah.
steel drums back in the day. So I had a truck license and just drove truck for a little bit. Some of the sites that he was going to back in the day, ICI chemicals and all the really big ones in Botany, for instance,
Yeah.
IBCs were starting to be a thing. And one of the engineers down there was saying to us at some point, "Hey, somebody needs to really start looking at deal with these new types of packaging,
Hmm.
and nobody's really doing it. So it'd be a good idea for someone to do it." Being young and brash, I thought, "Yeah, this is easy. It's just the tank, right?"
Yeah.
And yeah, so we just sort of started bucking around with them and seeing what we could do with them, how you could clean them, and it was in a very small way, just learning about the packaging and
Hmm.
experimentation, a lot of experimentation. Then somebody wanted us to clean 10 of them or 20 of them, and then we'd do that. And
So, sorry, Anthony, when you say IBCs, these are intermediate uh,
intermediate bulk containers.
bulk containers.
Yeah, so
These are these 1 by 1 meter cubed
that's right.
plastic containers that are in a metal cage.
Yep, and they have a
Yeah.
pallet integrated into the cage.
So they are easy to move, easy to transport, and all sorts of liquids are stored and sold and transported in them. Am I summarizing that about right?
Yeah, that's right. But the key feature of them is that they revolutionized the shipping of pallets, because you could put 4 200-liter drums on a pallet, whereas in exactly the same space you could maximize and get 1,000 liters. So that changed everything globally for shipping liquids around. Yeah, so our big break really was Nalco Chemicals. They had a lot of stainless steel tanks and really fiddly things. They were doing tanks for plant rooms and things like that. And they wanted somebody to help them service and manage these stainless steel tanks, sort of an engineering type of thing, but cleaning involved. And they sort of threw it out there to all the existing players at the time that were drum reconditioning people and, all the usual sort of places. And we got invited to work on it, and we sort of looked at it from an engineering perspective. We refurbed the whole thing, made them like brand new and polished it. And when we sent them back, they were so impressed because nobody even responded, nobody even submitted anything. So we sent back this sample. They loved it so much that they got us in and they showed us their entire fleet. And back then they had about 7,000 plastic IBCs. They had probably about 1,500 stainless steel IBCs, hundreds of all these other things. And they asked us to manage all of that. So we sort of started there and just through trial and error work out all of this stuff. And it was really our sort of big break, as it were.
When was that approximately?
That would have been 27 years ago.
Late 1990s.
Yes, it was the 90s, definitely.
Yeah.
And then just the trajectory from there was we grew, but it had many growing pains. It was very difficult because back then too, the market was different in as much as that the big corporates didn't like to take responsibility for things like excess liquid waste and stuff like that. So they'd be giving you their work, but you would be ending up with massive waste problems as well. They were very expensive to deal with. So the profit was pretty low for a long time until you figured out how to make it work and put the right things in place.
And so is it right to say that your facility in Sydney, would it be the biggest reconditioner in Sydney or sort of one of the key reconditioners?
It's not as big as the largest player, which is owned by Visic Packaging. They have a very large site in Sydney. For the size of our site, what we actually generate and put through it, nobody can comprehend what we're getting through it because we've got the machinery now, we've automated what we're doing, and it's a very high volume going through it. So,
and I think you're pretty humble about the business, Anthony, but I mean, just to kind of recap a little bit on what you're saying. So, I mean, for people who don't deal with this all the time, I mean, when you're talking about an IBC, you can imagine the amount of plastic and metal that goes into a large, a 1,000 litre container for liquids. What the container reconditioning industry is all about is about cleaning those containers many times over so they can be returned to proper use and actually be reused over and over and over again through several cycles before the components of it are then broken down. So the plastic and the metal are broken down and then themselves be recycled. So the work that the container reconditioning sector is doing, and particularly you guys, is really extending the life of those containers. So it's a really important thing. And I think that people probably don't realize just how much we rely on the movement of liquids in IBCs. And I think it's one of these things that probably, it just happens behind the scenes. Nobody really thinks about it. Yeah. But so many things that we do every single day rely on the movement of IBC containers around.
I appreciate that, James. Yeah, you've got a good understanding of it. And I'd like to say that we were basically sustainability before sustainability was a thing. Yeah. So we don't send things to the tip. Just tracking back to the job that I had when I was surveying pipelines, I know where it all goes. Well, I know what's underneath, our city. I know where it all ends up. And one of the things which can be difficult at times is that there's an assumption. Authorities may turn up and just make an assumption sometimes that you're that careless that you would let things, go down the drain or whatever. I'm very much aware. I love the beach. I love our city. It just is mind-boggling.
Wonkway, what's the most common liquids that are transported in IBCs?
The most common, I would say lubricants. Oh, there's huge amounts of food products. Well, Coca-Cola, for instance, is imported in this country in IBCs. So anything food related, actually, I would say that the largest volume I would say is definitely agricultural chemicals, like massive. It's huge.
Fertilizers, weed
Yeah,
killers, these kind of things.
fertilizers. Yeah, that's right. Herbicides, insecticides. So yeah, there's many things.
The IBCs get emptied out, and then there's remnants in there,
Yeah.
be it not entirely emptied or along the IBC walls, and then somebody needs to clean that, and that would be you.
Yeah, that's right. So we bring the IBCs into the plant from all over the country. They come into Sydney, and from Sydney we then redistribute them out to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia. They go everywhere, but there are remnants in the IBCs, and we actually go to great lengths to get those remnants out and keep them, separated, and have the appropriate waste company come and take that away, because they specialize in that. We specialize in cleaning the IBCs and emptying them, and they specialize in managing the waste. That's the product that has to come out of the IBC before we even put it onto the wash.
So you touched on before that really the whole industry is based around this principle of sustainability and getting the most out of resources before we recycle them or dispose of them. So you've been doing this for a long time. So you would have seen concepts around environmental management of sites, particularly if we're talking about the site where you operate, changing a lot over time. Are you able to just talk to us a bit about like what environmental regulation was like when you started versus where it is now?
I would say that when we started, it was more cooperative, as far as you would be able to talk to, not like a case manager, but like your local operative, whoever that was, and talk to them about what you wanted to do, how you were going to do it. They would give you advice, and also that they would have an interest in what you were doing and understand the process. So it was a double-edged sword, because there was a lot of dodgy stuff going on back then in various sectors, right? Like in other players that are not around now, but there was sketchy stuff happening. But they probably weren't as in your face. However, it was a lot easier to communicate with them and have a productive relationship. Whereas over time, what my experience has been, that they sort of have taken an approach where changing people all the time. I guess there's a concept out there where whenever there's a relationship manager within regulatory environments, I believe that they change people regularly so that there's no chance of collusion or corruption or anything like that, right? So, supposedly. However, what that does is that creates a situation where there's no actual relationship. And each time that they turn up and it's a new set of people and whatever else, you go through the same stuff all over again. Nobody knows what's going on. The massive change that has happened is that people turn up and they don't even know what you do. They got no concept at all, and they just look at it and make a visual assessment in 30 seconds and say, what is this? And you have to, explain to them the process, where you would think, though, by now that there would be some sort of information connected to your license where they would say, hey, we're going to go visit this place. So I'm in the meeting before they come. Right, let's have a look. What do they do? There's none of that. They just sort of rock up and, then it's, you explain what's going on and talk to them about it, but there doesn't seem to be a real interest. It's more, what are you doing?
And I don't know if it's a factor of not having time or just not having the right system set up. I think just touching on your point there about the level of turnover, what that means is if you're going to set up an organization, a regulator like that, where you're going to have a high turnover of staff to avoid, in theory, to avoid the issues like you mentioned, you've got to have really good systems supporting that and really good ways of communicating and handing over information and getting that continuity, like you said. And from my perspective, I just don't think those systems are there. So exactly what you said happens. It's either just a lack of time or a lack of supporting systems that officers are just turning up with no real understanding of the site they're trying to regulate.
The other part too is that they don't actually realize when they're turning up to a site where we are really putting a huge effort and a huge investment into doing the right thing. That's a difficult too. And it's hard not to get upset about that, because, it's your business and people are coming in criticizing everything. And you're like, well, what? Hang on a second. You've got no idea what we're actually putting into this and what our core beliefs are. Look, it's become more combative rather than cooperative. That's not good, because all it does is it puts the people that you want on your side completely offside.
So what we are talking about here is a problem that basically any large firm that has client contact faces. And these are CRMs, client relationship management systems. I don't know, whoever you call, from Telstra to Qantas to local council, it doesn't matter who you call. You hardly ever manage to speak to the same person. But there is software and there are procedures that can manage this. And when you call someone and you can hear it, you can feel it, that they are actually very, very quiet because they are reading your case file and they're trying to get up to speed. That all sounds so extremely easy. But CRMs are incredibly difficult to roll out. They are incredibly difficult to maintain. They are very difficult to be taken up by your staff. It's one of the toughest gigs in IT is to roll out one of those systems. So I'm not necessarily known for going easy on the regulators, but in this case, I must, however, say, look, I hear where you're coming from, Anthony. I also know how incredibly difficult it is to have a proper handover of the ongoings in your firm to the next case officer. It sounds also all too easy, but it really, really isn't. So here goes Gunnar's, I hereby protect the regulator briefly.
I'm sort of calling back to my time. I did spend a bit of time working as a regulator in the Commonwealth and Department of Environment. And I do remember working with that system a little bit. I don't know how similar it is to New South Wales EPA or Council, but yeah, it is difficult to do. I think one of the challenges with this sort of stuff is that the volume of information. So if you've got a site, say, with a long history, and there's a lot of volume of information there, it just seems like a real obvious use case for AI as well. Like if we're talking about what are the use cases for AI in government or in regulation, like the ability to quickly compile and kind of give the summary of the regulatory history of a particular person or entity. I don't know. It just seems like a real no-brainer. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's something there that the EPA could invest into if they wanted to.
That's a very good idea, because you only look at how good ChatGPT is, and also what comes up on Google now. Yeah. I can look at regulatory information. They used to take me wading through thousands of pages of things to find.
Yeah.
And pull it up on AI. It's awesome. I even pull up things about our own stainless steel IBCDs on AI to see where it's up to, and it's spot on. It's spot on. Back to what we're talking about DPA, though, I would say Sydney Water. We have Sydney Water on site maybe once or twice a week.
And that's in relation to the trade waste regulatory system, yeah?
Yeah, it's a very similar thing. And in a way, it's more sensitive, right? Because we're putting things down the drain.
Into the sewer system.
That's right. So it's effluent that's been processed. However, over time, they changed their operators, but they do a handover. They have a file on us. They have an agreement. They know our process. They know actually what we do. So when the new person comes, I don't have to walk around the site. They've already had a handover. They come and meet with us. We have a very good working relationship. It's an entirely different thing. It's very similar in the scope of what they're doing, but they seem to have more of a grip on it, I would say, than the EPA for sure, and council too.
It's amazing. This is the second time in 24 hours that I hear someone say how impressed they are with Sydney Water's operations, because
no, let me just clarify that. The people we deal with are great, but the system and the costs and everything associated with it are a little bit backwards compared to other states that have true, proper trade waste systems where the effluent does go down the sewer, but they have the plant and equipment to process. Like in WA, everything goes into the main line, and they have the plant and equipment to deal with it, and you pay your fees and charges based on what you're doing, and that they're going to process it. Whereas we're paying higher fees and charges to have all of the technology, all of the cost, all of the chemistry, so that we can put effluent water down back into their system that they have to do very little with, but we get charged a lot to actually do that.
You must end up with an unbelievable cocktail. You clean all these IBCs out, and we already mentioned what's in them, from vegetable oil to herbicides, from pesticides to lubricants, everything. Do you at least try and separate these out in your process, or does this tell us just a little bit about this?
No, absolutely. You wouldn't allow just a whole range of things to go on together, because that would just create a very difficult blend of things to process. Look, the key is that we get out of the IBC before we do that process. We get most of the stuff out. What's in there is very little. We run them in batches, and we also have the cleaning solution that we're running through the automated system is compatible with whatever the product is that we're cleaning, which helps to break it down. We dose the effluent system with certain chemistry to crack out the different contaminants. There's a bit involved, but if you just put everything up onto the wash without pre-treatment, you would not be able to deal with the effluent, not unless you had some incredible technology in the effluent. It's just all a matter of management, really, and over a long time, we've learned a lot, and we have a lot of resources too.
I wanted to kind of go to that point you said here about, I guess, like the information that's available to you, I guess, to help you comply with stuff. So you made the point there that you felt like the relationship with regulators in general has kind of moved away from a cooperative or collaborative one to one that is more about pointing out issues or mistakes. Your touch points with council are probably non-existent unless they rock up and they're saying that something has gone wrong. Is that fair to say?
Never see them unless someone says something to them about something, and then they might show up.
Yeah, and your touch points with EPA really, I imagine, would be mostly just an annual touch point with the annual return. For example, you have to do an annual report through your license.
Yeah.
And then there are others, but focusing on those two. So you don't really have much in the way of defined touch points with regulators unless something has gone wrong. So in saying that, like, do you feel that those two regulators in particular are doing enough to give you tools and resources to particularly keep up to date with things, because things are constantly evolving in environmental management, both in terms of practices and the rules? Did you find that you get much proactive information coming your way?
Not really. I mean, no. Well, there isn't. There isn't any sort of anything that's coming and saying, "Hey, we recommend that you do this." Yeah, you get plenty of things about climate change, all this other stuff, but nothing that's relevant to actually what we're doing as far as on the ground. I guess what's already in the codes, the expectation is you should know this, and that's how the site should be set up and whatever else. But there's definitely not email blasts or anything like that coming through saying, hey, it's that time of year again. Have you thought about this? Or are you compliant with that? Or, there's really nothing other than them just turning up unannounced and wanting to have a look at everything.
I'm not aware of anything. I mean, the only thing I would say is, like, I have over the last year or so seen in the lead up to really bad weather events, particularly like large storms, I've seen on occasion an email go out from the EPA, it seems like, to basically all their regulated sites saying, prepare your pollution incident response plans and stuff like that. But other than that, I haven't seen any communication that's tailored for regulated sites and licensed sites. And it just seems to me to be a real opportunity for the EPA to do something there, to tailor some communication on a quarterly basis or whatever it is, because you can get the same general communication that we all can get by signing up to the mailing lists and that sort of thing. But I really do think the needs of the regulated community is different to everybody else. I tend to agree from my observations that there doesn't seem to be a lot of proactive support there
There isn't really.
Licensed sites.
You basically, you pay your fees every year and you do all the work. and you just don't even, who knows who's looking at it, who's monitoring reports, anything. No one would know. You would expect more, really.
What would you like to see? What would you like to see happen? In an ideal case, I'll give you a Christmas wish list.
Well, I've never thought about it before because I just get on with it. But if you were to say, hypothetically, what James is talking about, which raises a very good point, maybe they should consider industry-based things, where there's a license in a particular industry, like we're not the only one doing this. Reconditioning, IBC's reconditioning, drum reconditioning, they could have something that was basically tailored, is your bunding up to date and whatever else? Have you got, plugs in the drains? Have you checked this? Have you checked that? You could do things like that. That would be industry specific. And if there was particular people working in different sections of the EPA that were involved in industry sectors, then surely they could come up with something. I'd just like to see some more even-handed activity across the board and see that they're actually doing their job with everyone in the same way. Yeah, the same as waste transporting. Waste transporters licenses, for instance. There's a hell of a lot of paperwork that has to be created to move empty containers around from all over the place. The administration is enormous. Now, in 20 plus years that's been in operation, not once have we ever seen an audit, heard of an audit, had one person contact us in that entire time
Yeah.
And this would be millions of IPCs that have moved around,
Mm.
and who knows where that paperwork has ended up.
I think, yeah, we're touching on a point there that I do want to come to in a moment, because I know that's something you're very passionate about, which is that level playing field. Let's call
Yep.
it that. So let's come to that in a sec. I think in the shift that's happened, not just in the EPA, but I think in government and regulators in general over time, away from giving advice themselves to shifting the responsibility for advice onto, say, the consulting sector. It's a common thing you hear. I'm sure you've heard it, Anthony, where you might ask an officer a question, and the officer says, "Well, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you what the problem is. I'm not here to tell you how to fix it. There are consultants and other people who are available to help you do that." It's a pretty common thing that gets said.
Yes.
It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. I would agree.
This is a government-wide, at all levels, shift that has happened, which is that the mindset about like what is our role has shifted. So on that point, I just want to touch on the role of consultancy as well. So we kind of supporting both people like you in industry, and we're supporting the regulator, and that we're trying to uphold the rules. Have you seen the role of consultants change or grow, like from when you started to now? And I just want to get a bit of feedback on like what you think consultants do that are good and what you think that is not so good. So maybe we start with the shifting role of consultants over time.
Yeah, it's good that you bring that up, because I do have very much so in the early days, it was consulting with the EPA officers. The first time I ever saw a consultant involved was another operator who'd done something. And I was just following it, and I saw that there was a consultant. So what's that? So I sort of looked it up and thought, that's interesting, and looked that company up, because some of the things can get overwhelming and out of hand. And look, we didn't have to use a consultant until recently, but I did see them over time, become more and more prevalent out there. So I
Just
think,
the sheer volume of consultants and consultancies seems to have grown over time, I would say, in our sector.
yeah, and it's definitely the case, because I would say that it's almost become too hard to deal direct whilst you're trying to run a business and, do everything that you're trying to do. Also, dealing with some of this stuff is just overwhelming and very time consuming. I think consultants play a very vital role, being in between.
Speaking the same language sometimes, I find, is how I describe it.
Being able to interpret the noise and cut through, and also just bring it back to, okay, let's take the emotion out of it and just figure out what have we got to do, and also raise some things that the client may not have thought about at all, or a different perspective of how to look at things, and just better ways to get things done, actually. So my experience has been very good with consultants. Yeah.
So what are you looking for when you do engage a consultant? Like some of the characteristics, are you looking for somebody who comes in and kind of understands what you need and suggests maybe alternate ways to approach things? Like, is there anything else that you found useful over the years?
Absolutely. All of the above, really. Firstly, developing a plan of responding, getting the language right, breaking down what the actual situation is, and find a path through it, definitely. And then also presenting regulatory things in a more coherent manner, just unscrambling everything, and also taking the heat off as well, being able to have somebody else who can do some of the heavy lifting, and then basically summarize it and just come up with a plan of action.
Yeah.
And also being able to talk to whoever the regulators are, because my experience is they can be not very good when it comes to communicating and even just answering things or whatever. And then it becomes a problem because the communication is breaking down badly and other things become involved.
Sounds like it's a lot about strategy and clear communication.
Absolutely. And also personality too. It's not every consultant's going to be someone you want to work with. It's got to be someone who has got a good approach, keep on the level, keep things moving.
Yeah. And is there anything you've seen over the years that you think consultants should do less of?
Or more of.
More or less.
That's a hard one, really. My main experience with consultants in the regulatory sense has really only been in the last couple of years, which has sort of been good in hindsight, good experience. But before that, I'd really only had engineering consultants and things like that, which is a different ballgame. They tend to waffle.
One of my main goals with my clients is that I get to a point of trust with my client. And that is really hard to come by, or from my side. So how do I get my client to trust me? Because when I look at the client, they of course think there's a guy who's trying to sell me something. And it's always hard for a client to distinguish between, is this an add-on sale that everybody is talking about in the consulting industry? Well, once you have a client, add-on sales are the thing to go because you don't have to market. That is a two-edged sword. I am trying hard to get to a point with my clients where when I say, hey, you really need to do this, that they accept that as my honest opinion and not as a sales pitch.
Definitely.
And I don't really know how clients do that. How do they distinguish the smooth talker from the ultimate expert that they can trust?
Yeah, from my perspective, definitely I can tell you, because I'm a very cynical person. It's really once you see the actions and you see sort of the volume of things and the time. In the beginning, it's very hard to put together and say, well, how long is this going to take? What is this going to cost? Who knows? Well, just start to see a few things, you see some results, and then you put together, okay, get a real bit of an idea about this much work has gone into this. And then you see if the consultant is a good consultant and they're pointing things out to you, maybe you didn't think of, that you can definitely understand and say, hey, that's a good idea. You know what? You've got my best interests at heart. Then the trust is building through those sorts of things. And also the trust is building too, because if you're in a jam, and you need someone to really step up, they step up, and then you start to see that they're able to step up and they're able to put forward great work. Then the sort of cost is a lesser factor when you're getting these results.
Mm.
I guess it's more of a factor if you're really in deep in something and everything's going on all at once, then there's all that stress. And then that's just another stress. That's how it could be from my perspective. But look, the trust for me was not just the bills and the work, but everything really. That site visits, phone calls, meetings, taking the heat off you, talking to the opponent, just everything really. I actually, you know what? I'm going to say this. I forgot about this. We did have some consultants that we engaged to do something before, before we had the consultants that we used to do a lot of work for us, which has been great. There was a couple of groups that we had that were supposedly doing some other things that had to happen. And the meetings with them was definitely, where is this going? And it was just one meeting was with 4 people waffling about all this stuff, and we need to have another 4-hour meeting. And we just sort of came at it with no results and thinking, no, this is okay. We're going to call it on this, because straight up, it just did not come across well.
You gave them a chance. You just couldn't see any value from what they were doing, and it seemed excessive. And
no, and in fact, a couple of the people that were in the meeting just seemed to be spitballing and not understanding what we were doing. There wasn't a great level of confidence with what they were saying.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't come across well. So,
is that a large firm, a small firm, medium size? What happened? Or let me ask you this: do you prefer large firms with many legal teams and technical teams and engineering teams, or do you prefer, on the other end, smaller companies with more personal contact?
I don't mind if it's one person or 1,000, as long as the work that they do and the person or the people that they put forward are competent. So small company, big company, that's irrelevant to me. What's relevant is the results and the level of skill. You can clearly make that judgment when you meet people and you start talking to them. And if you've been around for a long enough, when it comes to things like regulations and whatever else, you can tell the people that have got the right ideas and are all over it compared to the people that are just sort of waffling.
Yeah, no, I think getting to the point and getting there as quick as you can, and making it clear to your client what value you're bringing is really important. there is an ethical consideration that comes into this stuff as a consultant when you're doing that. There is an ethical consideration. In the environmental profession, at least, anyone who's certified, we have obligations to our clients that are defined in our code of practice, like our code of conduct for our certification. And part of that, I think, is that ethical obligation not to take your client for a ride and to suggest things that are genuinely in their best interest and not in the interest of your bottom line.
Really? Yeah, we're all for world peace, aren't we?
But
the beauty queen devotes her reign to end world hunger. Yeah, right. James, good one.
Gunnar always gives me a hard time about this stuff. But let me say this, doing things in that way is also commercially the right thing to do because it's not sustainable. If you're taking your client for a ride, they will catch on sooner or later. And then, word can get around, or you certainly won't be getting any repeat business from that client. So I just think it's a bit of an unsustainable business strategy as well.
Oh, totally. And do you want them just one time, or do you want them for the rest of the days?
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to be around.
And even if that client doesn't have a heap of work for you, it's like you want a client that's going to tell other people how good the experience was, or somebody who's going to say, "Oh yeah, no, I probably wouldn't go back to them anymore."
Yeah, yeah.
That's really helpful for us. Like I said, I think a big part of our audience is consultants, so it's always nice to hear a client's perspective. We're so busy like delivering work and stuff, you don't often get to stop and actually talk to people about what this experience was like. I want to go to a sort of a final point, I think, to wrap things up. We've talked a bit before this about the concept of the level playing field and your concerns about the way that licensed facilities like yours and unlicensed facilities are being regulated. And I think this is particularly true for like EPA licensing. Do you just want to talk a bit about your experience with unlicensed competitors and what your concerns are?
Sure. So during the entire time that we've been in business, there's been other players, people, companies that have been doing things, cleaning drums, IBCs, handling waste. Everyone knows who they are, and they're not licensed. They go in and compete against you, take work off you. The function of being able to report them to the regulator, I know for a fact that my company and my main opposition basically gave up on making complaints years ago because it goes nowhere. Everyone knows who they are. They even advertise. What happens is that they've got no overheads. We have 20 odd people. We support 20 families that work in the company. We've got to pay bills. We've got to pay everything that is to do this properly. We don't mind doing that. But when we're losing jobs and being undercut and unlicensed people blatantly doing what they're doing and making huge profit margins whilst the licensed people have to suck eggs, it's appalling, actually, because even if they've shown where they are, these places, and firsthand, we've seen them come back with answers that are ludicrous about why these places are not being shut down or not even looked at. They all know who they are. They know exactly who the dodgy people are. They're out there, but the only people that don't seem to do anything about it is the EPA. And personally, I think there should be something like a class action on behalf of all licensees. It would be the only thing that would drive change because an inquiry wouldn't do anything. They need to have something so dramatic happen that it would completely shift what's going on, because the way that it's all advertised, the pollution line, report this, report that, it's a farce. It's an absolute farce.
In the past, when you were making complaints, were you getting anything back? Like, what was the communication like about what was done?
Nothing. They might say, "Oh, we're looking at that." In the early days, they would at least say something. Right now, they don't even answer you. There was a recent one where it was asked many times, "What's going on with this one?"
Yeah.
The information was given, the address was given, all of it was given. The end answer that was pushed and pushed for that came back was outrageous. Just ignorance, complete ignorance.
Yeah.
It's infuriating. I think that we're all being ripped off in a way. The people that are actually looking after things that have real interest in the environment and are attempting to do the right thing, investing heavily in doing the right thing, we are all being ripped off. And it's funny, the bigger and the more bloated that the bureaucracy has gotten, because they've certainly increased their numbers at the EPA, it just seems to have gone backwards. They will rock up, though. If somebody rings up and says, "Hey, tank management is doing something," they'll be, boom, they're there. straight away that they'd be there saying, we've been told this. And so what are you talking about?
It is kind of well known that EJ in particular, like their ability to enter a site are more straightforward when it is a licensed facility. And that's a common thing that I hear from licensees, which is that, the minute they get a complaint, particularly in an industrial area where there are multiple industrial users that might be contributing to something like dust or noise, it's often the licensed facilities that get the attention because there is an easier power for officers to enter.
I'm taking notes here already for our Tony Chappell Revisited episode one day.
Part two.
You've got to laugh at this. Yeah, the last time we had them at our place, telling us about everything that wasn't right. We had some IBCs outside that were not in the covered area, right? Empty IBCs. Now, across the road from us is a site that doesn't have any licensing at all, that their whole front courtyard was full of empty IBCs, but they didn't want to know about that. That was not what they were here for, right? So...
And from memory that, we're talking about an activity across the road that we're not even saying required a license. That was a non-scheduled activity, but was an industrial activity that generated a large amount of waste, empty IBCs.
That's right. And down the road further, someone was putting flammable empty 200-litre drums on the nature strip. It's like the Benny Hill show.
I don't know enough about class actions or anything like that to know like when you can do them, but I think I take your point that what is needed is a major shake-up and something that will prompt a major rethink of how this stuff is done. Because for anyone who's not that aware, like the licensing system in New South Wales, it's a self-reporting system. So you have to self-identify when you trigger the thresholds above which you have to hold a license, and you have to go and apply for one, right? So with any self-reporting system, there's going to be people who either knowingly or unknowingly don't seek out a license. And the regulator needs to be well equipped to detect and deal with those entities.
Yes.
Look, and I know that there's a lot of caveats and reasons as to why the regulator might struggle with this thing. I'm not saying it's easy, but in my experience over, 15 plus years, I have also found it to be lacking in a lot of situations. Yeah. So
yeah, and even the cost, James, is that the cost for me, for my company, doing exactly the same activity as my competitor or someone else, it's not the same. There's these arbitrary decisions that are made, and there's also this really dangerous one that's lingering in the background where they want a financial bond to be determined on what? There's been all these figures thrown around, but it's such an uneven way of doing things. Look, my thought with a very clever law firm that could raise something like this, licensees deserve to have some sort of a compensation. The amount of money that we have to actually send them, and for what we're not getting, it would be something sent a very good shockwave through the place. We've just had decades of doing the right thing, contributing to this bloated behemoth, and we're not getting what we should be out of it.
I agree with you that there needs to be some kind of a rethink. Well, that's time. We'd love to keep going, Anthony, but just out of respect for your afternoon, mate, we might leave it there if you're happy with that.
I've got to get back to it, mate. I've got people pinging me.
You got a plant to run. Yeah, you got an actual business to run. So
No, it's been great to talk to you guys, and thank you for having me.
Not at all, mate. It was a pleasure. Thanks very much for that.
You too. Bye.
See ya. Bye, guys.